Hi everybody, welcome to Simply Scuba, welcome to Ask Mark, and of course Happy New Year. In today's Ask Mark, I'm going through all of your questions, so if you have any questions, let me know down in the comments below. If you use the hashtag Ask Mark, it just makes it a lot easier for me to find them, so try and add that into your comment. In this week, we're talking about twin BCDs, BCDs that you can use for singles and twins, when new gear lineups, because we're in the new year, surely the manufacturers are going to be bringing out new stuff when that kind of bits and bobs tends to be announced. UV lenses, how easy it is to scratch that coating, my top 5 masks from last year, swivel joints on regulators and swapping over hoses, bolt snaps, of course, because bolt snaps, and when is it appropriate to progress onto your next course. So let's dive straight in and answer the first question. So the first question comes from Travellingteachertales, good alliteration there, TTT. Is there a wing that can be set up either for a single or, if needed, doubles? So this is quite a common question, so don't worry about it. It does exist. You can find it on recreational BCDs. You can find some recreational BCDs that are obviously designed for singles, but then you can buy something that's usually called a BIBO kit, B-I-B-O, and that basically adds a second cam strap to it. It's not really what it's designed for, but it means that you can fit twin cylinders, but they'll be completely separate twins. You couldn't have a manifolded twin set bolted onto them because it's quite a flexible joint. But if you want to dive 2 independent cylinders on your back, it can be done. If you're moving into backplate harness and wing kind of setups, that's where it gets a bit tricky, and there isn't really, as far as I'm aware, a current system. And the main reason why, I actually have some to hand. If you're diving singles, and you then want to go onto twins, if I get a single wing, so this, granted this is quite a skinny one, this is my sort of holiday travel wing. You'll notice this kind of dead section in the center, which is where your cylinder is supposed to go, is quite narrow. It's the size of a single cylinder. So if you have 2 cylinders either side, it literally covers up the parts of the bladder that want to expand when you add buoyancy. So you actually can't get the same maximum capacity in some circumstances, obviously, but it's not really what they're designed for. You also have an offset inflator, so your inflator is going to be bumping up against a first stage, it's going to get in the way. It's not really what they're designed for. If you choose to go for a twin wing, you have some different problems. So if you went for twin wing, it's great for twin cylinders. You have this big open sort of dead space in the center. The buoyancy is going to be exactly where you need it to be. That inflator is dead center as well, so it's nice and out the way. Only if you switch to a single cylinder obviously has plenty of space in the center. But if you ever add any gas into the bladder, what these do is naturally float up, and they create a tacho, we call it the tacho effect, where all of that buoyancy kind of wraps up around your cylinder. And then if you are horizontal and you go to press that purge button, nothing's going to happen because the air won't go down to then come out of that inflator hose. You kind of have to adjust yourself and your position in the water so the gas can travel to one of the valves so that you can vent. So there's no real unicorn that will do both of them. It's kind of better to have 2 separate wings if you go down the backplate and harness setup. And it's a matter of, if you want to do it properly, the best way to do twins is with a backplate and wing. It's almost worth having a single cylinder setup and a twin cylinder setup, whether you want to do that with backplates so that you can have the same harness for both and then just swap out the wing, or just have like a recreational style single cylinder setup and then a more sort of heavyweight twin cylinder setup. Because with a backplate for twins, you have more rigidity. You have that sheet of metal that the twins bolt onto, so there's no like wobbly joint on it, because a lot of recreational BCDs, they use plastic parts. They'll do twins, but it'll be a little bit floppy. So that's kind of my recommendation. There isn't a one day someone who probably hasn't been born yet will come up with this genius idea of a buoyancy system that works for both singles and twins. The closest that we have right now is side mount, but if you're not into side mount, that's a lot of extra clipping and extra bits and bobs. But that's the closest thing to this like magical unicorn where you can dive both one and double cylinders. Sticking with Travelling Teacher Tales, they ask, when do brands release their lineups for 2022? Wondering whether to buy Xdeep Zen and the Apeks XL4 Plus now, or wait to see if someone brings anything else out onto the market. So around now is the time. It's usually, in my mind, it's around February. Because we're still kind of in the downtime. Fewer and fewer divers are sort of diving at the moment, but when it comes to February, we're leading up into the main diving season, so people are starting to dig out their equipment out of the garden shed and realizing that the mice have eaten through it or whatever it is, or that it needs servicing, or it's just I want a new such and such. So yeah, it's normally around January, February to the end of January is when they start to release their some new lineups. You'll often get from the big brands, your Apeks and Mohrs and all that kind of stuff, you get, yeah, here's the 2022 catalog that you can flick through. In that, they'll often have little markers on new products. They often have like a new section at the beginning, so they're boasting about their new and exciting stuff. But it kind of depends. Some things, as much as they announce it now, it won't be available now. So yeah, lots of different things. It comes to supply chain and all that kind of stuff. So you can have some products that are announced in February, but they're not available until June, July, or even later on in the year, or even following years. We had a mask years back, and it was announced it was going to be this anniversary mask. It was all very exciting. People loved it. They put in sort of pre-orders and all that kind of stuff, and it didn't come out for a good 3 years or something. Yeah, and it's just down to manufacturing issues, and they bring it back for testing or something. And yeah, so January, February time, you should start to see brands releasing their sort of 2022 lineups. But if it's not like immediately available, they're not going to get you too excited for something for you to wait like 6 months time and then it's available. So they may announce it, but they won't do a big song and dance about it until when it's like a week or two sort of on your sort of dive center shelves. But yeah, around now is usually when you start to see stuff being released. As far as the Xdeep Zen BCD and the Apeks XL4 Plus regulators, I think you're pretty safe. Xdeep aren't like the other sort of big diving brands. They don't come out with their seasonal stuff. I don't think they're going to change the Zen. Saying that, could they bring something else out that's new? Maybe. It's been a little while since they've released anything, and they don't tend to sort of tease things. It's just, boom, we make this now. Oh, okay. I don't know. They might do. If they do, I'll be one of the first to let you know. The XL4 Plus, that's still a relatively new regulator, a lovely regulator, good for both cold and warm water diving. So yeah, that's never going to go out of style. So I think with those two, you're pretty safe to invest in those. But yeah, give it about a month or so if you really want to sort of look out and see what the very, very latest stuff is. Wait until sort of mid-February going into March, and everyone should have announced their like 2022 lineups. You might have to go onto their websites to kind of find their catalogs. Question 3 comes from Kevin. They ask, Apeks VX1, does the UV protection scratch easily? So kind of, it's one of those things I wouldn't like to test it out, especially if you're investing in a new mask. It's always been sort of recommended when you're treating your mask for the very first time to, if it's got a UV or some kind of special coating, to not do the outside, the water facing side of the lens, because yeah, it's far easier to scratch that than just pure tempered glass. So I would be quite careful with it. As far as I'm aware, the Apeks VX1 mask They recommend to use, I think it's a pH neutral soap, just a bar of soap, to pre-treat it. Apeks actually did a video on it. I'll see if I can link it up in the corner. And yeah, I'd just be quite careful with it. I don't think it's like, it'll brush off, but if you do sort of like scratch it against something relatively hard, I wouldn't be surprised if it did sort of come off, so do be careful with them. But yeah, it's not just gonna melt off or something if you touch it with your hand. But yeah, something hard, which should never really be around the lens of your mask, do be careful with it. And when you are trying to pre-treat the mask or clean it, try not to use anything abrasive on the outside, especially the UV coated side. Even if it's something like C-Buff, which is usually designed for pre-treating masks, that is still abrasive, and you do have to be very, very careful. So if you do have a UV or some kind of treatment on your mask, it's always best to actually ask the manufacturer what they recommend. That's why I mentioned that pH neutral soap that Apeks recommends, just because they've probably done it before, they've probably tested it, and it's better to have their recommendation. But yeah, go easy, test it in a little corner first if you do want to do the outside. There's no real need to pre-treat the outside, because that's the bit that the water's touching, so it's always cleaning itself. But yeah, I'd be more careful if you have a treated lens than just a traditional tempered glass lens. Another Mark asks, could I ask what are your top 5 masks for 2021? I mean, yeah, the Apeks VX1 mask immediately comes to mind because of the previous question, but that is one of my top masks. For what you pay, you get a lot of mask, and it's a very, very nice high quality mask. Even with the UV cut, it's not ridiculously expensive. It comes in a nice EVA case, which is good, compared to the sort of the plasticky cases that you used to get with a lot of masks. I know a lot are transitioning to sort of cardboard boxes nowadays instead of the plastic ones, but the VX1 comes in a reusable like EVA case like we make. And yeah, it is very nice, good looking mask, and it comes in a few different colors. It is only like black, white, and I think they call it DARPA grey, or gunmetal grey. But yeah, that's a very nice mask. The Xdeep mask, I call it the Radical. I don't think that's its official name, but if you go to the Xdeep website, go to the, I think it's officially just called the Frameless mask. But if you go to that webpage, the first thing that comes up is Radical frameless mask. So I always assumed that was its name. I don't know if it is what its name, but whatever. That's a nice mask. It's Xdeep, so of course they focused on every little feature, and very comfortable, plenty of space sort of around the nose. Frameless design, so it folds down really flat, and it's relatively low volume, single lens and everything, and it's just nice attention to detail. It's a very comfortable mask. Another one of my favorites is the Kray, the Calibro. It's more of a freediving mask, but you can use it for scuba diving if you really wanted to. The main reason for the Calibro is that it has their do they call it fog stop? It's like a second internal skirt that just goes around the top of your nose, so that when you're equalizing the mask, equalizing the squeeze, and you breathe out through your nose, the air doesn't go up over the glass lenses and cause them to fog up. So it really does reduce the amount that they fog up. I tried it with a brand new mask straight out of the box, and usually as soon as you just put a little sniff into that, it just fogs up. But with the Calibro, it didn't. It took quite a lot of effort to make it fog up. So yeah, that's always sort of in my top 5 list, and it's low profile, so you don't have to equalize it quite as often, but you can still use it whilst scuba diving if you really wanted to. Zeegle scope mask. We're all kind of on a similar tack with the VX1 and the Radical. Zeegle scope, frameless design, but nice big open nose pocket, so if you do suffer with that, it's going to be a bit more comfortable. But the main difference with the Ziegler Scope is that it comes with that elasticated bungee strap instead of this traditional silicone strap. It's more like snowboard goggle bindings, whatever they call it. But yeah, nice and comfortable, very quick and easy, but a bit stronger than the traditional silicone strap. And probably the Atomic Venom Frameless My Mask. It's nice, simple. Again, it kind of goes into that sort of frameless design, but very, very comfortable mask because it's got this gummy bear seal. It's much softer just in this section, the actual sealing surface, much softer. So even up around the top of the lip with my moustache, it's still sealing across there, and decent field of view, so you can still see sort of plenty of space around you. But I think those are probably my top 5 at the moment. Yeah, until someone brings up something new in 2022. Soothsayer asks, is it possible to swap out the rubber hose with a coloured Miflex or Miflex hose and keep the Atomic provided swivel on the T3 regulator? I've heard the entire hose assembly is one piece. Yes, what you've heard is correct. As far as I'm aware, they so when you have a swivel ball joint, a fitted one on a second stage, one of the main downsides is that it's unusual to be able to sort of unscrew that and just replace it with a traditional hose. You can buy swivel joints that are just a separate sort of nut that you fit onto the second stage, and then a traditional hose attaches onto that. But when they're factory fitted, it's unusual that you'll be able to swap that out for just a traditional hose. So yeah, if you do need to replace a hose on an Atomic regulator with that fitted ball joint, you usually have to change it for one of theirs, and they have quite stock lengths. I don't know if you can make a custom length one. I'm sure if you ask really nicely, they might be able to do it. But yeah, just buying it from a catalogue, it's usually there is the standard replacement sort of rubber hose. It's the real main downside of those swivel joints. They are nice because it can help to reduce jaw fatigue, but replacing hoses, you don't get quite the amount of sort of like customizability and sort of replacement. And I don't think I've seen anybody that does a what do you call it, an adapter. So on some regulators, like on some Poseidon regulators, because they have, or at least had, some really quite unique screw threads, it's not that traditional 9/16 inch, you had to have an adapter to be able to swap out the hose for any other brand. So, but I don't think I've ever seen one where you can remove that ball joint and then fit a traditional what is it, 9/16 sort of screw thread. So no, unfortunately, I think as far as I'm aware, I could be wrong, let me know down in the comments below if I am, but yeah, I think you do have to replace like for like, unfortunately, on the T3 regulator. Ben asks, quick question, what's your go-to brand for a good bolt snap? Xdeep are the real little like sort of top tier at the moment. There are quite a few good brands out there that do make fairly traditional bolt snaps, but there. So, I mean, that is a very traditional bolt snap. I think that's from, I honestly don't know, to be honest, but as long as it's got a nice smooth action, that's kind of okay. This one is from Apex. This came with their Lifeline spool, and you might be able to notice, I'll do a close-up later, the actual triggers are a bit more squared off, so if you're wearing chunky gloves, it's a bit easier to get hold of it. Again, nice smooth action, so very easy to use, but really for like proper bolt snaps, if I was specifically buying a bolt snap just for a use, it would be one of the NX range from Xdeep. The attention to detail on all of the things, everything from the eye, this little rotating section. So this is for like a second stage or a tool. You don't need a huge eye on it, so they made it nice and small, so it's really compact. If you're using it for gauges or attaching something that has a larger eye, I think I've got one of those knocking around. The double ender is basically this, but on the other end, basically. Bigger trigger, so very easy to use, again, even with big clunky gloves. They've made this nice hard sort of right angle joint, so that when you're using it, it sort of sits in your finger very naturally, and you can pull against that so you get a bit more grip. The gate itself is very large, so you have plenty of space to clip things off, and the actual hook itself just allows for plenty of space. So yeah, if you're looking to invest in a new bolt snap, I believe it's worth upgrading to this. If you're buying something new, if you get like a new finger spool or something, and you get something like this and it's fairly okay, I wouldn't bother immediately upgrading to something else. But if you lose that one, it gets pinched, then I'd sort of go for an Xdeep bolt snap, just because they're that much nicer. Just be sure to like mark them in some way so that if someone does pinch it and claim that it's theirs, you can clearly say that no, that one's mine. And finally, Kray asks, just got certified this week for open water. Congratulations, well done. Any advice on how much experience I should get before going for my advanced? So with the PADI system, you can go straight from open water to advanced if you really want to. You've already met the criteria, the minimum sort of requirements for your advanced, but it is usually a little bit better to try and spend a bit more time sort of getting used to the water. The main one that I often think of is try and get to a stage where you can control your buoyancy where you are in the water without using your arms at all, so that you can just navigate through the water a bit more intuitively. If you've got your buoyancy down, then yeah, sort of advanced open water is your next natural course, and yeah, that means you're going to start learning about navigation, deeper diving, and different aspects of sort of specialities and routes that you can go for your diving. But yeah, the main one is your buoyancy. Make sure that your buoyancy is down, you've got good control, and you can sort of stay sort of in the water where you want to be without too much hand movement, and then yeah, you can sort of definitely move on to your advanced. But there's nothing that's really sort of stopping you, because what you can do is go down the sort of peak performance buoyancy option in the advanced, and they will help teach you some buoyancy sort of skills. There's a dedicated dive for, and it just focuses on your buoyancy. So if you do struggle on doing it by yourself, then yeah, maybe that's a nice sort of way of doing it with an instructor. They can give you little tips. They'll sort of teach you about trim, and if you find that you're very sort of head down or head up in the water, they might help to sort of recommend, oh okay, we'll start to move some lead around on your BCD so that you can get a bit more horizontal in the water, a bit more efficient. And then they'll teach you about different breathing techniques and all that kind of stuff, how to control where you are in the water, yeah, without using your hands too much. And yeah, that's it for this week. Again, if you've got any burning questions, let me know down in the comments below. If you use the hashtag #AskMark, just makes it a lot easier for me to find, because when you put it into the comment section, sort of behind the scenes, it's just a whole list of different questions, but I can search for #AskMark and it brings them right up to the top for me. So yeah, if you have any questions, comments, queries, or even corrections to anything that I've said, let us know down in the comments below. Don't forget to head over to simplyscuba.com. Thank you for watching, everybody, and of course, safe diving.